Welcome to the debate. Today we're focusing on the structural failure of creators, and we're using that framework that's become pretty well known, the 7 levels of YouTube downfall.
Right. And it's a compelling framework, I think, because it gives us a kind of hierarchy for public collapse. It suggests that, failure isn't just one single event, but it's a progression. Just to quickly clarify, the scale moves from something like a level 1, which is a minor PR incident, a badly worded tweet, all the way up to level 7, which involves actual criminal conviction and, jail time.
And that framework, that structure, brings us to our central question for today. What is the primary engine that drives a creator deeper down that hierarchy, especially past the point of no return? Is it, as I'll argue, their internal trajectory? So the creator's persistent ego, their refusal to learn, their lack of accountability. My position is that in the creator space, character really is destiny.
And I'm going to maintain that while, yes, internal character is relevant in those lower tiers, the ultimate severity of the downfall, it's fundamentally determined by the nature of the transgression itself, the intrinsic severity of the unethical or criminal act. I think these acts define the level, especially at the highest thresholds, and they often just bypass any kind of slow internal failure narrative.
Well, I assert that the entire progression, at least to the lower and mid levels, is a failure of internal character and growth. We see creators at levels 1 and 2, minor controversy, a dent to reputation, they recover. And they recover precisely because they show immediate accountability, some humility, and a willingness to adapt. Take MKBHD, for instance. When he faced that really swift and sharp backlash over his panels app, people criticized the poor design, the pretty egregious $50 yearly charge. He didn't deflect. He didn't make excuses. He issued a highly praised 10-minute apology video. And in it, he showed the humility and self-awareness you need to self-correct. He publicly admitted it was a failure of vision, even greed. And that act of learning, it prevented escalation. It's similar with Otterat, who was called out for faking his 30-day traveling series. He made a quiet but really critical internal shift. He stopped positioning himself as this authentic travel documentarian and just doubled down on what he was good at, producing high-production, very entertaining videos. So his recovery was based on an internal adjustment, not on asking the audience to just forgive the original. Now you contrast that with the catastrophic collapses we see starting at level 3. And this decline is fueled by a refusal to learn, a consistent pattern of character failure. I mean, Logan Paul's journey is just a long trail of controversies and scandal, one after another, since the Akihara video. His whole cycle of reckless decisions and shady crypto projects, it shows a perpetual failure of any internal reflection. The ego, that refusal to genuinely reform, that's what prevents any real redemption and guarantees a permanent stain on.
Okay, I appreciate that focus on accountability. I really do. But I think that only holds if we assume the transgression is negotiable. The framework itself shows that some acts are they're inherently destructive. They immediately push a creator past the point of any gradual deterioration, regardless of their prior conduct or, any attempts at an apology. My argument really rests on the qualitative shift that happens at level 5 and above. The distinction between a level 4, a collapse of credibility, and a level 5, career destroyed, it isn't just about an escalating ego. It's a shift from dishonesty and recklessness to allegations of deeply disturbing or criminal acts that are backed by undeniable evidence. These acts, they breach fundamental ethical and legal thresholds, and that makes the internal state of the creator kind of irrelevant to the outcome. I mean, think about Colleen Ballinger at level 5. She built an empire over 2 decades, and she saw it just collapse almost overnight because of allegations of predatory behavior towards minors. Ava Tyson had a similar swift terminal destruction after credible grooming allegations came out. This rapid, total destruction is tied to the nature of the offense. It's about committing serious harm, breaching a fundamental societal trust, not some slow internal rot that could have been fixed with a better apology video. The destruction is immediate, it's unavoidable, and furthermore, the ultimate downfalls, level 7, are defined entirely by external, objective, legal consequences. When Ruby Frank, who is a former advice creator, got the maximum 24-year sentence for horrific child abuse, that outcome was determined by a judge and a jury based on the documented nature of her crimes. These are criminal convictions. The act and the legal status that results from it are the primary driver of that final level of destruction, completely independent of the creator's ability to, express remorse or reform their character. The law defines the bottom.
I see why you emphasize the gravity of the law, but let me offer a different perspective on that threshold between, say, level 2 and 3. Accountability. That internal willingness to self-correct is the real differentiator between a temporary dent and a permanent stain. Linus Tech Tips, LTT, they faced a serious blow to their credibility when Gamers Nexus exposed inaccurate data and some questionable internal practices. That was an existential threat to their whole brand, which is built on trust in their technical expertise.
Right.
And had LTT deflected, or stalled, or given some half-hearted excuse, they would have plunged deeper, probably to a level 4. But their actions, releasing that detailed 20-minute apology, getting multiple team members involved, promising major internal overhauls, that showed a fundamental internal correction. They managed to stabilize and bounce back.
To me, that is definitive proof that taking responsibility and showing a path forward is the key mechanism for navigating a crisis. It determines where you land on the scale.
That's a compelling point, but I think you're defining the success of that correction a bit too broadly. Accountability only works up to a certain threshold, and that threshold is defined by the severity of the offense. Let's consider PewDiePie. He quickly issued a public apology after using the N-word and making an anti-Semitic joke on a live stream. He did the internal work, he admitted fault, but Disney and several major corporate sponsors cut ties almost overnight. His apology might have calmed the audience backlash, sure, preventing a full fan collapse, but the severity of the offense, the cultural damage, it overrode his efforts in the professional sphere. The damage was external, immediate, and defined by the transgressive act itself. It set a hard boundary. LTT's data errors, while serious, just didn't hit that same ethical fault line. That proves the nature of the act dictates the maximum damage, no matter how good the apology is.
That PewDiePie situation does highlight the power of external forces, specifically corporate sponsors. But even in his case, his ability to keep his massive core audience shows that the personal relationship and his willingness to reform, however you want to view it, still allowed him to stay commercially viable. He avoided a complete level 4 collapse. He learned to manage the outrage cycle, which is in itself an internal adaptation.
But see, that takes us right to the crucial distinction between level 3, a reputational stain, and level 4, a complete collapse of credibility. And this distinction just reinforces my argument that the nature of the deceit is the deciding factor. Level 3 creators like Sniper Wolf, for example, faced massive condemnation for content theft and doxing Jack's films. Her image is permanently stained, she's infamous, but she still has a massive subscriber count. Her platform remains because the ethical breach was against her peers, not a betrayal of the trust model of her direct viewers.
Exactly. Whereas level 4 creators, like Boogie2988, they lose all faith because their manipulation, faking a rare blood cancer for years for sympathy and money, was an unforgivable betrayal of the deep personal loyalty his audience gave him. His brand was built on vulnerability. The manipulative nature of that specific act shattered the trust, leading to a complete terminal collapse of credibility.
It's a kind of collapse that level 3 creators who are just involved in drama or content theft, they just don't experience. The depth of that deceit required for level 4 proves the act itself is the differentiator.
That's an interesting distinction about the trust model, but I think you're defining the internal failure too narrowly. I come at it from a different angle. Logan Paul's sustained pattern of, disgusting behavior and reckless decisions is what's kept him circling level 3, never achieving real redemption. His scandalized image is the accumulated weight of his refusal to reflect on Aokigahara, followed by multiple crypto scams. The difference between L3 and L4 isn't just the category of the act, but the longevity and the depth of the creator's self-destruction. Yes, Boogie's long-term lies reflect a greater internal deceit, but the root mechanism is the same, an unchecked ego leading to ever more desperate, manipulative actions. Sniper Wolf, Logan Paul, they're just creators who manage, through sheer commercial size, to sustain that cycle of toxicity without completely blowing up their platform. But the internal engine of failure is constant. The downfall is just slower.
I'm not convinced that just surviving commercially really mitigates the terminal damage to their reputation. And this brings us back to the line that you drew, the internal flaw escalating into actual criminality. While I agree the internal flaw might be the precursor, levels 5, 6, and 7 represent a definitive break from the logic of online reputation. We are moving from failures of accountability to failures of, legality. For example, level 5 creators like Ava Tyson or Colleen Bollinger faced allegations that fundamentally violated child protection laws. No amount of internal correction can fix that. Once the police are involved, or once the evidence of predatory conduct is undeniable, the outcome is determined by external societal standards of harm, not by the creator's capacity for regret. The criminal act is the cliff edge.
I still maintain that these ultimate outcomes are the logical result of an unchecked ego turning outward and violating those societal boundaries. Jay Station's path is a perfect illustration of this. He started his career chasing shock value, faking celebrity deaths, faking paranormal encounters, all driven by this desperate, toxic hunger for attention.
For clout.
Right, and this internal flaw eventually led him to more and more deplorable stunts, culminating in his arrest and charges for assaulting his girlfriend. His crime wasn't some random external event. It was the logical endpoint of using toxic behavior as his brand. The internal flaw, that hunger for clout, is the root cause that metastasized into actual criminality.
I'm sorry, I can't buy that hunger for clout adequately explains the final level of destruction, which is defined by the state. That rationale works for someone like Jay Station, sure, who used stunts to build his brand. But it completely collapses when you look at Ruby Frank's downfall. Ruby Frank was convicted and got 24 years in prison for horrific child abuse, threatening to withhold food, terrorizing her children on camera. This was not a stunt for clicks. It was a deeply private, malicious pattern of abuse that was brought into the public eye through police intervention. The conviction was based on physical evidence of malnutrition and injury. Her case is a fundamental break from the online ethical failures we're talking about in levels 1 through 4. The nature of the transgression, criminal child abuse resulting in a legal conviction, is an absolute external consequence. It makes all the previous internal motivations, the creator's ego, totally irrelevant to the final level of destruction. Level 7 is defined by the justice system finding you guilty of major felonies, not by a failure of personal growth. The external legal structure is a decisive factor that creates that unavoidable total collapse.
It suggests a fascinating tension. The internal journey dictates whether a creator can navigate level 1 or 2, and the refusal to reform ensures that permanent stain of level 3 or 4. The material we're looking at clearly shows that a creator's capacity for self-reflection and accountability largely determines their outcome in the public eye, right up until that highest threshold.
Conversely, I think the hierarchy established in the source materials suggested definitive qualitative boundary exists at level 5. Below that line, the path is negotiable through character shifts. Above it, the nature of the criminal or predatory act, backed by undeniable evidence and leading to legal charges, is the decisive factor. And that leads to an immediate, unavoidable collapse that no amount of internal growth or apology could ever mitigate. The transgression itself is the cliff edge.
So understanding the creator collapse cycle seems to require both perspectives, examining the internal moral rot and persistent self-deception that fuels the slow burn, alongside the undeniable absolute external gravity of the most severe acts.
Yeah, exactly. The varying pathways to downfall, whether it's that slow erosion driven by ego or a sudden catastrophic collapse because of a severe transgression. It really deepens our understanding of the fragile relationship between the crafted creator persona and the undeniable boundaries of reality and law.